Hi everyone, this is Rob Phillips again. I wanted to I wanted to set up some sort of explanation and some possibilities after I added a couple of changes to my app, bookends.io. You'll see the original demonstration of bookends.io in the previous video. But what I'd like to talk about now are some changes that I went in that I sent to the app that are that are able to distinguish, for example, between private and um, public perm sets. Public perm sets ultimately can be used in such a way that there's no URL associated with them. And as you'll see, I'm just going to bring up a little whiteboard here. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and bring up a whiteboard here that I've made, existing whiteboard, and it is this whiteboard. So the way the application works ultimately is that um, the environment is set up in such a way so that the user uh, basically logs into whatever D app that we're talking about. In this particular case, the example I used was for decentvote.io. And I just added this other D app here as an example. So the point here ultimately is that that user and the username and password that are associated with that user um, can log on to any number of D-apps, right? So they you can have hundreds of D-apps that are associated with the user, and that user can use this logon methodology to access every all of those particular D-apps, right? So I'm going to set one up here pretty soon. I've already got one set up for Decent Vote. I'm going to set one up for Grokism. I'm going to set one up for some other organizations that I'm actually working with here very soon, right? So ultimately, when the user logs on, you get a token. And what happens is that list of perm sets associated with the user are passed to the login user. And if you recall the decentvote.io explanation, actually, I'll probably show that to you here in just a couple minutes again. But when the D app creates their perm sets, the default for those perm sets is basically private, right? So that what that means ultimately is that these perm sets, um, when you log on to your perm set, that list of perm sets is basically passed down to your D app. But if it's a private perm set, the process will check to see which URL that is it you are associated with. In this case, the organization name is called Decent Vote, and the URL that is associated with the organization name Decent Vote is called you know decentvote.io. So that's the actual URL. So what happens is all of those perm sets associated with the organization Decent Vote, and they match the URL that the user is logged into. All of those perm sets will get passed down, including a token, will get passed down to the logged in user when they log into decentvote.io. So the other thing is that that user again, it's the same thing with DApp2, for example. In this case, um, there's going to be a list of organization or an organization that created that list of perm sets and that vetted the user on those perm sets and the passed down to the list of private perm sets that are associated with that particular organization. But I want to talk about uh, something else here. I want to talk about something called public perm sets. Now, public perm sets are a special case where they're not associated with the URL. And when these, however, they are associated with the organization, so an org name, so you'll have to create an org name. And the idea is that you don't necessarily have a a URL associated with it. Now it is possible to still have a URL, but so imagine you are an organization and your entire purpose is to vet people in such a way that they come into an office or they come in or they go through a process online where they show you your driver's license information. uh, they show you, I mean, maybe you can even have some biometric sort of stuff. And the point of going through all that process is to assign you a permission set that basically says you are a human, right? You are a human. So, or you've been proven to be, to have these rights to do something. And then ultimately, that perm set and the encoded information, the fact that you have been vetted by this organization and that you have been given this particular perm set and it's been associated with your user over here means pretty well that you are a human. You are the organization that actually vetted you. Their purpose is basically to say you are a human, and then we'll give you a permission set that shows that you are a human. So when a user logs into any of these DApps, so the private perm sets are passed down, but also that public perm set, in which case the perm set that is saying, oh, you are a human, is also passed down, right? So separately, you can have an organization that goes through the process of proving that you are a human, um, giving you the permission set saying you've been vetted, you are proven to be a human, and then passing that permission set down to any of these DApps. So this, for example, decentvote.io will have not only all of its private perm sets, but it will also have the perm set to show that you are a human, right? So within your DApp, then you can execute things. For example, you can have a public a social media app, right? That sets it up in such a way so that whenever you want to post something, whenever you want to, interact with social media app in some way, it checks for the existence and the token of this proof of personhood um, perm set, right? So in that way, you can have you can have thousands of interacting users. And as long as you make a requirement that that perm set is required for you to do certain things, basically you're setting up your social media app so that AI bots can't infiltrate it because it's always about proving with that permission set, right? So there's a variety of things that sort of gives you this ability to do. Um, in such a way so that you can execute things based on the addition of that public perm set and the private perm sets that are associated with the DApp. So I think this is a pretty powerful sort of thing that allows us to prove that we are human, to give access to certain, things that we want to do on a DApp. And it's expandable. So in other words, this thing can go on. You can have hundreds of DApps, you can have hundreds of perm sets, which won't all get downloaded, which won't all have any association. You can have you know, uh, uh, 20, 30 different URLs that use this particular service where you have one user associated with all of this stuff and all these sets of perm sets. So in this way, you can get what I'm thinking of is like a public DAO where you have an organization here, you have a vetting organization, you have a vetting org that goes through the process of, you know, um, involving, you know, of involving humans to, you know, prove humanity, prove humanness. And it can be separate from everything else. So if its only purpose was to vet people, right? So furthermore, you can say you can have an organization, you can have a government organization, for example, in a state or something like that, that says, okay, you are not only human, but you have this ability to drive in the state of Minnesota, for example, right? So uh, you can not only supply a perm set for the for the humanness of it, but you can have a perm set that says, oh, you can drive in the state of Minnesota. So in this way, we sort of orchestrate a whole list of public public rights, I guess is probably a way to say it. Um, and they can be kept ultimately private, except when you got to prove that you have those rights, whether it's interacting with the policeman or whatever it is, right? But also the proving you're a human part is also done by the vetting organization. So this is a far cry from something like WorldCoin. WorldCoin, um, basically, they put you through this biometric stuff, and then they basically say, okay, we've got control of it. We're going to give you some money, or some advantage to be able to go in and get your biometrics done, and that's all going into a database that is actually controlled by WorldCoin, controlled by, well, it probably goes in a blockchain. And a lot of people have an issue with that. And I actually have an issue with that too. So this is not kind of a way, it is a way to basic to do that without giving centralized control to WorldCoin, for example, right? It's a way to uh, ultimately be able to execute zero knowledge proofs on the existence of a perm set, um, and where the the only thing that you need to prove is that you have the rights to do something, right? So you don't need to expose all of that other information. So in this way, over time, a particular user and a particular individual will have a whole list of perm sets and a whole list of rights that they're given through these DApps, but also a list of public perm sets that allow them to, to interact publicly in such a way that um, the DApp can basically execute on those two. Now, it doesn't stop the DApp from sort of doing the same thing of proving humanness. I mean, the people that run the decentvote.io organization can also go through the same sort of human proving sort of thing. And so you might have redundant proofs, which is fine. But it also means that if we have a public organization here, non-URL based, with public perm sets, it means that DApps don't really have to do it. All they have to do is key on that one public perm set that says, you're a human. So in other words, it sort of goes through this process where it's not necessary to for the DApps themselves to actually prove that. They can, and I would suggest in some cases that they're still going to need to do that. But having a external vetting organization is probably I see it happening, maybe 10 years. I don't know how long it would take, but eventually I think people will go into an office or something like that and they'll bring their information in and they'll prove it. So we do this with driver's license already, right? So and we end up getting this thing called uh true ID or whatever it is. So it's part of in Minnesota, it's part of the getting a driver's license. It also allows you to travel within the United States. But imagine if you have that, you can have all that pre-done. It also adds to the functionality of, for example, a voting app. So it basically allows us to go from top to bottom in such a way that um, things are completely consistent and the user doesn't have like 5 million different logons for things. I know this is one of the things. Um, I also want to talk about, so I've talked about this thing called oligarchy. Um, one of the biggest mm, one of the biggest business um, sort of models is to take your data and to package it up and sell it, use it for to make money as a business model. I mean, there's so many organizations that do that now. I mean, Google, and don't get me wrong, I kind of like to Google, but it's their business model to take your data and use it to sell it. It's also the business model of so many others, uncountable numbers of things. I mean, we have to make these huge laws um, to try and protect it, but with AI nowadays, I don't think it's even possible to provide much protection on getting your data. And so I think we have to build systems that are that allow us to do this, that keep our agency and our security and things like that, and yet still prove, particularly in regulated industry and such, that we are human and that we have the rights to do these things. So, you know, to really, when you start considering the things that we can execute on the back end, for example, with decentvote.io, or whatever DApp. So we're going to come to this. I decentvote.io is an application whose ultimate goal is to build a completely online voting mechanism, right? And so as I go through this process of building out the decentvote.io app, I'll give some more, I'll give some more, you know, um, I'll make some more videos about how this is going to work. But ultimately, this proof of humanness and this proof of rights is key to the whole idea of an online voting mechanism. Um, because if you own your identity on the backside, if you own it and permission sets are passed down to you to the DApp, it basically means that um, it's a way to have, for example, hundreds of DApps, and with one user to log in, with one sort of methodology to do it, and then have proof of personhood. I don't think it's ever been done before. So anyway, um, check out bookins.io, bookins.io. I'll publish here in the next day or so a basically just a little tutorial on how to do it. Um, and we can go from there. Awesome. Thanks so much. Be sure to go to my YouTube page and subscribe to it. Anyway, thanks. Bye bye.